I mean, if you think of them as right-wing moles having to sit there festering at the Supreme Court, waiting until they had a big enough majority to do what they were sent to do, and then they finally have the great day when they can do it, and they can let the unlimited dark money flow, and they can take away abortion rights, and they can shut down the Voting Rights Act and do all these great things. And instead of getting cheers for it, they are criticized. They're thin-skinned and they're criticized. But it's almost like, the cicadas have come out after years of just sitting there in the dark. Now they're showing who they really were all along, and there's a lot of resentment wrapped up in all of that.
Hi again, everyone. It's now 5 o'clock in New York, another day, another reason to have profound and deep fear and doubt in Justice Samuel Alito's ability to be fair and impartial on the United States Supreme Court. That was Senator Whitehouse's theory of the case. We now have a new instance where Alito reveals himself. It has to do with new undercover audio recorded last week by a progressive activist named Lauren Windsor at the Supreme Court Historical Society's annual dinner, an event we told you about here before it happened. Windsor is known to coax candid comments out of Republican figures by misrepresenting herself as one of their allies. What you're about to hear is a portion of her recording. Windsor, playing the part of a religious conservative, speaks to Justice Samuel Alito about our nation's ideological tensions. Listen.
Know that we can negotiate with the left in the way that needs to happen for the polarization to end. I think that it's a matter of winning.
I think you're probably right. I think one side or the other is going to win. I don't know. I mean, there can be a way of working, a way of living together peacefully, but it's difficult, because there are differences on fundamental things that really can't be compromised. So it's not like we're going to split the difference.
Spoiler alert. It's not like you can split the difference. Alito, in his own words, about whether or not the right and the left can ever, quote, live together or work together, quote, peacefully. This is a part in the program where we are obligated to tell you that as a network, we reached out to Justice Alito, as well as to press officers at the United States Supreme Court, to see if they wanted to respond to Justice Alito, in his own words, on tape, saying those things. You can't, quote, split the difference. We haven't received any comment yet. If we do, while we're on the air, we'll bring it to you right away. But again, another extraordinary development in the entire history of the United States Supreme Court. Justice Alito, caught on tape, is where we start the hour with some of our most favorite reporters and friends. Senior correspondent at Vox, author of The Agenda, How a Republican Supreme Court is Reshaping America, Ian Millhiser is back, plus senior editor for Slate and host of the Amicus podcast, Dahlia Lithwick, is back. With me at the table, MSNBC legal analyst Kristy Greenberg's here. Dahlia, it gives me no pleasure to say this, but if the country is educated, I say this as someone who spent my career in Republican politics, if the country is made aware of the extremism and radicalism of two of the members and families of the United States Supreme Court, 2 of 9 members, it will be thanks to liberal activists like Lauren Windsor and investigative journalists like those at ProPublica. What an extraordinary new piece of information and revealing comments, in his own words, on tape from Samuel Alito.
I think it's fair to say, and I know you didn't mean it this way, but I will accept the criticism that, the Supreme Court dedicated press corps has a little bit been on screen save on this story for a very long time. We've known a lot of things were a little hinky, and I think most of us just felt like it was our job to report the cases and not the conduct. So, thankfully, what surged into the void was, as you said, Politico and ProPublica and the New York Times and now Lauren Windsor, who are saying, the conduct is not just shocking and unconscionable and should be covered. and this is important, I think it's what Senator Whitehouse was getting at in the promo. It's intrinsically connected to the cases that we cover. It is intrinsically connected to the doctrine that they produce, because these are justices who in their private lives, day after day, show that they're in the tank for one side.
It was not intended as a criticism, more a celebration of I guess your analysis, though, is a little sharper than mine, Dahlia, so we'll go with it. We'll adopt it around here. I'm just so grateful. And listen, no one in this conversation has more culpability than me. I worked in the White House that appointed Samuel Alito. My theory, and it was why I was pressing Senator Whitehouse on this, my theory is that there's a chip on Alito's shoulder the size of petite little Harriet Miers, because he was Bush's second choice afterward. But something else has happened. I mean, he's completely radicalized. He's not stupid, so that's not the right theory. He's an intelligent man who's so deep in a view that even in right-left politics, traditionally, it isn't represented on the main stage or the spectrum. I mean, just talk about his articulation of godliness.
I mean, in some sense, look, godliness, the sort of comment to Lauren Windsor is a sort of reflection of much larger themes that are not surprises to us. You can't read the Dobbs opinion and not know how he thinks about godliness. You can't read the text of the speech he gave in Rome right after Dobbs and not know how he thinks about godliness. And lest there were any remaining doubt, the flag, the Appeal to Heaven flag that flew for months at his beach house suggests exactly how he feels about godliness. So, props to Lauren Windsor for getting it in his own mouth, but none of this is a surprise. And I just want to note, we have 2 major abortion cases that are pending that will come down in the next 3 weeks, in which at least one person has very, very, very strong feelings about godliness that will inflect on how that case gets decided. I
mean, 2 abortion cases. Yeah, Kristy, and immunity. And I think if this is the other half of how we are to interpret the things he said during oral arguments, we should all buckle up.
We should absolutely buckle up. I mean, to me, this wasn't so shocking, because following that oral argument on presidential immunity, Justice Alito's comments in particular were striking, because he talked about the fact that, these prosecutors are going to come after, the former president who should be resting in his retirement. And instead, you're going to have a bitter political opponent sending his prosecutor off, destabilizing democracy. I mean, it was wild. And, it was very clear where he was going. I think what we should absolutely do is buckle up for a very strong opinion here. But he was clearly forecasting that he is just in the tank for Trump, and he is going to write an opinion that gets to his desired result. I mean, when you hear those kinds of comments where he's talking about, the lack of compromise, and you don't need to compromise because one side has to win, and there are fundamental differences and somebody's got to win. I mean, this is a far cry from what we heard back in confirmation hearings about judicial philosophy of textualism and originalism. That's what we used to hear. And now, this is what he really means. It's about winning, because he has a larger view, and that is godliness. And that is what is going to be, reflected in his actual opinions. Everything else was just window dressing for what he really thinks and believes. And I think that is incredibly troubling.
And what is it that we should be prepared for on immunity?
I mean, you wouldn't expect them to say absolute immunity, because you would think that would be crazy. But then again, this is also crazy. Right. I've always thought that we will get a majority opinion, and maybe, again, Alito dissents because he is just that extreme, but some majority opinion that will have this kicked to Judge Chutkan and saying, oh, well, there's some outer perimeter, there is some immunity for some acts, she has to go back and go through the facts. And again, that accomplishes what they actually want to accomplish,
right, which is
delay,
yeah,
so that this doesn't happen before the election.
Ian, I didn't mean to put Dahlia on the spot. I appreciate how candid she was. I did the same thing in the last hour on the Trump story, and so I'll try to do it in the same way. Are we asking the wrong questions? I mean, and I'll take all of you out. Are we asking the wrong questions? I mean, is he too extreme to be on the Supreme Court? Is the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is controlled by Democrats, are they too convinced of their own lack of power and tools? I mean, what is happening where we're going like this? I mean, nobody thinks this is good, and nobody thinks there's anything that can be done.
Yeah, I mean, I think there has been an awakening amongst the American public to just how much of a problem the Supreme Court has become. I echo both of my colleagues who said this isn't a surprise. If you are shocked by the stuff that Alito said on this tape, wait till you read his opinion in Obergefell v. Hodges, his dissent, thankfully, where he said that one of the reasons why we can't extend equal marriage rights to gay couples is because if we did, then someone might call a conservative Christian a bigot. Wait till you read his opinion in Stormins v. Weissman, where he said that if you live in a town where the only pharmacist is a conservative Christian who doesn't like birth control, I guess you don't get to get your birth control because that person's rights trump yours. So, one thing that has been consistent in Alito's jurisprudence, that line that he had in the tape about how one side is going to win or the other side is going to win, is if there is the slightest inconvenience for his side, if someone might say a nasty word about his side, he has argued that that's a reason to take, fundamental rights away from other people. And I guess the reason why we're seeing so much attention on this, because Alito's been saying it in his opinions for so long, is after Dobbs and after so many outrages from the Supreme Court, the public is just really focused on the fact that, oh, wait, these guys are a problem.